I didn't want them to be too detailed. I was like, well, if I give myself that time, I'll do it really quickly, and then I'm just sort of splashing the colour on, and then you don't run the risk then of overworking them too much. So I knew exactly what kind of style I wanted to achieve, and I know that I'm the kind of person that will just sit and keep working on it, and I'll put more detail in and more detail in, and then suddenly it's not what I wanted.
Welcome to the On the Wall podcast, where we engage in conversations with artists, designers, enthusiasts, and visionaries who shape the world of interiors. Today's guest is artist Yasmin Smith, head of design at Milton King. She joins us to discuss the new Spring-Summer 2026 Wallpaper Collection from Milton King called the Painters Glasshouse. If you enjoy these conversations, please subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review, and share this podcast with a friend. Hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of On the Wall. Today we're going to be talking with Yasmin Smith, who is the head of design at Milton King. And we're going to be getting into the new Spring-Summer collection. So I recommend you watch the video of this one on YouTube or on Spotify, because we're going to be going through all the inspiration and all the designs in this new awesome collection. If you are only able to listen to it on the audio podcast, I will try to remember to do my best to describe what we're looking at. But I highly recommend watching the video for this. So let's get Yasmin on and get into it. Joining me now is Yasmin Smith, head of design at Milton King. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are things across the pond?
Good. Quite cold. Really cold today. I don't know why. We thought we were having, the sun was coming back, and then it's gone. It's super windy and cold and horrible today. So
I was just like a little bit of a tease, and then
yeah, it's fake spring, and then we're back into the winter again, basically.
So today we're going to talk about the new Spring-Summer collection for Milton King.
Yeah.
And as the head of design, you are a very important part of that whole thing. Yeah. You could say.
Yeah.
But before we dive into all the individual designs, I kind of wanted to just ask a few questions about how it all comes about.
Yeah.
So, where do you begin? How does it start? And so I would imagine that you working closely with Bryce Kapp, the co-founder and creative director. I imagine you guys are working really closely on what's the next launch going to be? How does that go? I guess you would have just a myriad of possibilities.
Well, exactly.
Right. So it's just how do you go, this is what we're going to do. This is the direction we're going to go.
It is super overwhelming. So it's one of those things where, so Bryce and I, like I say, worked really collaboratively together at that point of putting together a collection. So for this one, it was slightly different because we basically had all these different points of inspiration that we liked, and we were just looking through the catalogues of what we had already, and just sort of seeing what was missing, but also looking at trends that were coming up that we thought maybe we were missing, and and then bestsellers and things like that, this does really well, that kind of thing. So, but Bryce had an idea of some certain types of designs that he liked. And then I went away and was sort of researching how we can put that together. And it was as we were putting the collections together, it was obvious that it was two. So the Fable collection, which was autumn winter, was one, which is a lot darker and more sort of artisanal and historical, whereas this one was much fresher and lighter. I was like, well, that's very clearly a spring summer collection. So that's kind of how this one came about. But yeah, it starts with lots of talking points of go, I like this, just seeing things in exhibitions and trade shows and just magazines, or just even just someone's house on Instagram or something. This looks lovely, we want this kind of thing. Or it can be anything really. But yeah, that's where this came from. There's a few pinpoints of Bryce and I had a discussion, then I went away, put together things. So I go straight into things like Pinterest, of course, is one, but I try not to rely too heavily on that, because obviously there's so much AI in there at the moment, and also you get a lot of recycled stuff, so you don't want to use the same images over and over again. But I've got lots of books, so I go into books. I like to go to museums, but like I say, go to trade shows. For this collection, I used a lot of my own imagery as well. So once I knew what the theme was, because I like to take photos, once I knew what the theme was, I had a lot of things that I thought, actually, I can use some of my own photography for that too. So I had some when you see the collection, everyone, there's the big landscapes and things like that. So that sort of thing is actually quite first-hand research, and that's just sort of come from the surroundings, basically.
So you're going to you're going to trade shows a lot
Yeah,
and seeing what's out there
yeah,
and seeing what other
yeah.
wallpaper
So, so
companies are
yeah,
doing, or
but it's not necessarily just wallpaper companies. It's just interiors in general. So it could be like tiles, rugs, lighting, whatever. But a lot of these trade shows will also have trend sections, um, which is how you kind of. So when you see people launching at the same time, you'll notice that there's like, maybe everyone's doing sort of Japanese themed collections, and you're thinking no one's spoken to each other about this. It's all just because we're inspired by the same things, and certain exhibitions are out or things like that. So
I
that
was going to
kind
ask that. So like, how does that? I mean, like, how does the collective
it's how
move, like
it's like
the collective
hindsight, but
mind sort of happen it's because
mm,
everybody's just kind of seeing the same things and everybody's
yeah.
thinking, wow, that's cool.
Because you're inspired by the same things. I mean, obviously, for those sorts of collections, you can see like at the minute there's a real push for that kind of like wood block look. That sort of it's much more nostalgic. Everyone's using the same kind of. There's a similar theme running through things like kind of artisan craft. But then, if you look into the actual trends of that, people will say that's because of the rise of AI and things like that. People are leaning more into. I mean, I say AI is just an example, but technology and things like that. People are leaning more into that kind of. They want nature and they want things that have been done by hand. So people are pushing more into that kind of look. So actually, a lot of this collection we've kind of wanted to make it look like it's been super hand painted. It's not quite as perfect or like it's supposed to look. I know we print digitally, but it's meant to look like it's been printed either traditionally or like you say, you can really see the hand element to it. So that's
But
kind of
isn't
what.
that it? But that's, I would assume it's because it is hand painted.
Yeah, well, exactly. But sometimes you can really push that. So sometimes I might do a painting or something, and then I'll scan it in and start. I call it cleaning, but where you sort of you get rid of your little pixels and things like that. But sometimes you can go too far, and then it's almost too perfect.
On the Wall is brought to you by Milton King, your trusted partner for luxury crafted wall coverings. Milton King's trade program is designed to make your creative process seamless, offering exclusive trade-only benefits such as complimentary samples, early access to new collections, and professional pricing structured to enhance your business success. To assist with your projects, you'll have the flexibility to create your own custom swatchbook, tailored specifically to your design needs. With dedicated customer support every step of the way, our trade program is here to elevate your design vision and simplify your journey from inspiration to installation. Ready to join a partner who understands your craft? Visit miltonandking.com to apply for your trade account today. Milton & King, your vision, our craftsmanship.
So for this collection, I've kind of tried to leave it a little bit more. So it looks more like just the paper. The paint is just, I've just painted it onto the walls, basically. That's the kind of look that I've gone for. I'm quite a maximalist print designer, so it goes against every instinct of mine not to fill every single bit of space, which you will notice in some of the collections. There's lots of pattern and detail and everything that I do, but then this one, it was one of those things where I was like, we need something that's got a bit more breathing room. I wanted something we could experiment with different types of design, but also bringing in sort of things that are. I wanted to bring in an element of like geometry in a way that wasn't obvious. So things where there was
What do you mean by that?
line. Yeah, so it's things like if I'm doing a floral, for example, maybe there's an element of a stripe in there or a check,
Oh,
or
okay.
so just bringing in that. So obviously when we're thinking about that, you kind of think, okay, well that's the things I want to bring in a little bit. What kind of themes can I put together that I can encapsulate the whole feeling and story of the collection? So that's where the Painters Glasshouse came about. So I had the word glasshouse in my mind the whole time because obviously from a like a nature perspective, a glasshouse is a garden that you kind of manufacture, so you can manipulate it, you can create pattern or whatever, walled gardens, that kind of thing. But also just the elements of in my head I'm thinking like a Victorian glasshouse, like something from like the Royal Botanical Gardens or something. Big metal structures, lots of glass and things like that. So that's what came from that. But then as the collection continued and I wanted to look at things like vintage textiles and embroideries and different types of painting, that's when I thought, actually, I can incorporate this and make it more like a painter's glass house. So that's more of an artist studio that is in a garden, basically. So I'm essentially manifesting what I would like to have eventually. It's like a gorgeous conservatory where you can paint and you can look out at the landscape outside and be inspired and create, but not just necessarily painting. You can do ceramics, or you can embroider, or you can, create things with different crafts, which is why we've kind of encapsulated it in that way.
So the Painters Glasshouse is the title of the collection.
Of the collection, it is, yeah.
And so before we dive into it, how much, I guess, freedom do you have to just go wild with your vision and do what you want?
It's pretty, yeah. I mean, it's pretty good. Like, I haven't got, there's no huge constraints. Obviously, there'll be a time where I'll be like, I'm thinking about doing this, but I don't know if I'd rather have it in this repeat or this way of painting. And that's when, Bryce and I will chat about it, and he'll say, well, he prefers this kind of look, or we think this one's more of a best-selling technique, or this fits with the collection more. So there's a lot of collaboration in that sense. But in terms of like artistic license, I've got, a decent amount of wiggle room, which is good. And obviously the last thing you want as an artist as well is to be stifled in that sense. So you kind of need to have that experimentation room to bring things together and not feel suffocated. I know that sounds dramatic, but when you're having a day where you're thinking, okay, I've got to get this design done, because obviously we still work to deadlines, and things like that, and the whole collection's got to be done by a certain point. I give myself 3 weeks for one design, 2 weeks for another, maybe less. So if I'm like, I'm working on depression, then I just feel like I can't create in the same way. So it takes the pressure off to be able to experiment. But there were designs. I mean, there's 12 designs in this collection, but there was probably 20 different types that didn't really make the cut. So
I was going to ask that. Were there any that you sort of started designing that you're like, this doesn't work? Or...
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily. The big ones I kind of knew straight away. I tend to go through I do my mood boards, all the research, what the vibe of the collection is, and then I'll break it down into, okay, I want a tree of life design, I want a stripe, I want a whatever. And then there'll be others that just kind of evolve naturally. But then there are some where you just think, this just isn't working. It doesn't sit with the rest of the collection. The colours aren't working in it. So it either gets parked, and then sometimes you can revisit them and they might turn up in another collection later down the line. Or they never see the light of day, which is sad. But
Are you your own worst critic when it comes to that? Or have you ever been like, I'm going to get rid of this, and Bryce or someone says, no, keep this one?
Yes, actually, there has been a few of those. So for the Petite Prince collection, which was obviously launched last year, there was lots of, that was because it was very, very small repeats, lots of, stripes and geometry, little tiny things. I was just cracking out as much as I could, because I was like, this is fun, just quick printing. There were loads that went through there, and there was quite a few where I was like, I don't want to do this one, and Bryce would put it back in. So, which was nice. And then so that's why we have a bit more. It's good, obviously, to have another pair of eyes, because I can be quite self-critical, and I just think, no, people like that. Whereas he'll see it and think, actually, there's a person out there that will like this one or whatever. So then that's when we're happy to, like I say, have a bit more input in the collections and put things back in, take things out. So
all right. So you went through about 20, but 12 made the cut.
Yes, I think so. That's just off the top of my head, and maybe more. So, but yeah, the smaller ones are the ones that you could tend. The smaller designs, the little ones, sort of like this little blue one here. There was lots of different variations of that one, and lots of different. Yeah, so there could be more, but yeah, there are a few that do.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get into it. I'm gonna just share my screen here and what I'm looking at, and we can kind of go through it, and you can comment on each design and give us some background and inspo and all that kind of stuff. So let me go ahead and do that. And by the way, if you're we're focusing on this collection, but if you want to get more of Yasmin's backstory, you can listen to podcast season 2, episode 6, I think is what I remember.
I can't remember what it was.
But yeah, so I'll link it in the show notes of this episode. So if they want to go back and hear your story, your background, and all that kind of stuff, they can dive in there. But here we go. Let's see.
Okay, yeah. So we've got them.
So Painters Glasshouse, spring summer 26. So what is this? Is this the one of the main designs here?
Yeah. So that's probably the hero design. So for every collection, I try and do a mural, and then one roll, some bigger repeats and some smaller repeats. You've got some coordinates, and you've got some other ones. You can mix and match them, all that kind of thing. This is the one that's this is the 6-panel mural, so it kind of sets the tone for the collection, I would say. So yeah, this is what I was explaining earlier. So this is where all the kind of points of inspiration came from. So like I say, it's more like a painter's studio in a garden. But I like the idea of using all sorts of inspiration across all sort of craft. So, yes, it was painting, but it was also embroidery. So I've looked at sort of 17th century sort of Jacobean embroideries and Victorian tiles and stained glass, that whole kind of look. So the color palette as well was quite, like I said, that was quite important. I was looking at lots of different paint colors that I wanted to introduce, which is where that sort of celadon aqua color came in. But also there's a lot of emerald green and fresh blues in this collection as well, which we were missing just in general, but also from the autumn winter collection. That's when you can see the difference. So I would say it was a continuation of that kind of storytelling, but it's in a much more sort of fresher, prettier.
Yeah, so you make references to the Impressionist art movement.
Yes, I do. Yeah, so Impressionist, but that's one of the big ones. The Impressionist art movement was very textural, and that's where the Impasto Meadows comes in. So when I'll talk through that one, that's very, very expressive. So I didn't want to be too detailed. Yeah. But yeah, so like I say, different art movements, heritage textiles, silks and embroideries. Like I say, as I said earlier, I like to look through different books. So there's certain silks that popped up in books that I really loved that has inspired some of these repeats. But yes, so essentially it's a very fresh, understated collection, but with lots of different heritage inspirations. And then a little look into the creative process.
So right now we're looking at just a slide of you actually in the process of drawing these,
Yes.
painting all these different prints. So we have some images here of you kind of going through various designs and putting paintbrush to canvas, which is really cool to see the non-AI-ishness of the the collection, because you never know nowadays.
Hugely important to me, yeah. So I mean, this one, I did paint a lot of this collection, which is what is here, which is I just think it's so important to keep that alive. So try to do as many different types of technique as possible. So there's a few there that I would, one was painted much more detailed, which is, a bit more my natural hand. I like to do things a bit more realistic, but then some very expressive textural things. I've used different sized brushes. I've timed things to make sure I'm not working on things too long. And then there's, a few more stylistic things as well. But I would say 80% of the collection is hand painted. Some of it's been drawn and then worked into digitally, but I use a Wacom tablet. So for those of you that don't know, it's just like a drawing tablet, so you can draw straight onto the computer. So everything's hand drawn. Sometimes I will work into things digitally as well if I think painting's not the right route for it.
So you said you use a timer, do you?
Sometimes, yeah. So for this one,
we're looking at the Impasto Meadow now. This is the, I guess you say, the hero mural of the collection.
This is the 6-panel mural. So it's basically a depiction of a rolling countryside landscape, but it's very, very textural. So one of the things I wanted was for it, so when it was on the wall, you might not necessarily know, like up close. So this is obviously a huge scale. So the trees, for example, might just look like loads of brush marks, and then when you step away, that's when you see the actual landscape forming, which is what I wanted. So there are a few little details in there, like a horse and a windmill and a farmer's house, that kind of thing. But it is mainly textural. But those trees, for example, I would give myself sort of like 10, 15 minutes just to crack them out, because I didn't want them to be too detailed. I was like, well, if I give myself that time, I'll do it really quickly, and then I'm just sort of splashing the colour on, and then you don't run the risk then of overworking them too much. So
wow, so you actually you make a time limit for yourself and say, I'm only going to give myself 10 minutes or 15 minutes to draw these trees.
Those ones for sure, because I knew exactly what kind of style I wanted to achieve, and I know that I'm the kind of person that will just sit and keep working on it, and I'll put more detail in and more detail in, and then suddenly it's not what I wanted. So I was my own willpower, basically. I knew that I didn't have a lot of like.
Isn't it funny that it's sort of funny that creating, like, you would think like, oh, maximum freedom is the way to make the best thing, right? But it's
not necessarily for me.
You have to create those restrictions on yourself to basically, it's interesting. Like the restrictions are sort of what make it.
Yeah. So because this one,
you want it to be in the end.
way more detailed. I could have made it more sort of tapestry. You know, I could have gone really into like how do each defined leaf and all that sort of thing, which I know that if I'd sat there and just given myself all the time in the word, I would have started doing, and then I would have been like, oh, I forgot, that's not what I want. So each tree, like I say, took about 10 minutes. Maybe some of the big ones were a little bit bigger, a little bit more time, but like I say, and like I said, the rolling hills, that kind of thing, I did that on a huge bit of paper, but it was just huge, just that. I mean, the whole background was done in sort of like a day, which would not normally happen for a mural of this size, because I was like, I just want to get all the layers down. I'll just, you know, put some pink across it. I wanted it to be really expressive. So, yeah. So like I say, the time limits did work in my favor, I think, for this one.
Wow. Looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Now we're going to one called Pear Tree, which looks like there's 7 colorways.
Yeah, so with most of the designs, so with the mural, for example, I've only done 3 because it's just you know, I don't think it suited many colorways just because of the you know, because of the subject matter that I painted. But most of the colorways I try to do at least 6. So there is one with 5, but I like to do 6 or 7, just so there's, you know, a different variation for different people. Because obviously sometimes people might not like a certain design, but they like the color. And I do try, my color, like my ethos of colors is that I want them to be as different as possible, so that they're, you know, completely different products, basically.
Yeah. So how would you describe this for the audio listener, the audio version of the podcast? Because I was going to be like, you know, I'm going to try to describe this, but I think you would do a better job.
Yeah. So I would say it was a traditional tree of life. So a tree of life design is basically, with it's what it says on the tin, it's a tree. So a tree that grows up the fabric or the wallpaper, whatever, and then it, you know, spreads off into usually quite otherworldly plants and flowers. You know, it's a kind of tree that has, you know, all sorts of abundance on it, lots of fruit and flowers. And, you know, this one in particular, I've gone down the route of it being quite whimsical. So there's pattern in there, and you know, stripy leaves and little, you know,
seems almost like a vine in a way.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. So when you see, so that's one width of the wallpaper. When you've actually got it on the wall, it does create that vine sort of wiggly stripe. But in between, it's all joined together, you know, for all the foliage and all the leaves. I wanted this one to feel quite flat, and what I mean by that is there's not a huge amount of texture in the actual painting. So I painted it in a way where it was, you know, super solid, very, like I painted it all in one color, and then I would go in and do the red separately and the blue separately and the pinks, you know, all that sort of thing. So that was all very, very, there was no sort of, no blurring or ombres or blending of colors. It was all just, you know, very flat on top of each other, which is quite, I've mentioned it in there, it's like a crisp Scandinavian sensibility is what I've said there. So if you look back at heritage kind of Scandinavian textiles and things like that, they have this kind of look to them, which I really like. The Tree of Life is a really, really old sort of classic style. You know, they've been doing it for centuries. So I just wanted a sort of modern, fresh interpretation of that for our wallpapers, basically.
Got it.
Yeah.
Great. Now we're looking at Willow Wood.
Yep. So this is the one that's only got 5 colorways, just because that's, sometimes they say it's the same thing with the actual designs. I'll do about 15, 20 colorways, and then I'll have to painstakingly bring them down. But this one, it was very obvious for me which ones I wanted. So Willow Wood is inspired by 17th century Jacobean embroideries. So if people want to Google it, they'll see exactly what I mean. So if you have a look at a Jacobean embroidery, it's a similar thing where it's quite, I'll use the phrase otherworldly again, but everything's very flamboyant and not realistic. But one of the biggest things I noticed on these, all their sort of, trees or flowers are all on these wiggly, lovely islands, basically. With I've tried to recreate it here. There's, they have cross stitching in them and French knots, all different types of embroidery woven in basically to the pattern, which is why I've tried to include those into pattern, into the trees, into the leaves, that kind of thing. But I've obviously added my own woodland animals, which is what gives it that illustrative sort of storybook feel. And it's one of those designs where I think it's probably more conventionally looks like it's going to be for children's interiors, but I wanted to make sure that it was the kind of design where, if you don't want to put it in a nursery or something, it's still quite sophisticated enough that you could use it elsewhere. So that's why.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was looking at it, I didn't actually see it as a kid's Wallpaper. I didn't see that at all. So when you just said that, I was like, oh yeah, I guess it would
Yeah,
maybe do well in a nursery or something. But when I first saw it, I mean, I guess in more layman's terms for myself, there's a lot more space in this design, space between these
yes.
different.
That was another thing.
Oh,
So lots of wanted. So this one with the pinpoint of this really was we wanted something with a bit more space, with stylistic types of trees. So that's where it came from. So I was like, okay, I definitely know I want a willow tree. I want a fruit tree, and then I've added like a version of a palm tree and some other ones. But they've all the shapes and things that I've taken from old embroideries, and then I put the walking animals in myself. But there's also a sort of I don't know, like a linen texture in this one, just to as another nod to
yeah, I
the
can see that
fabric.
if you sort of look closely. Yeah, you get that textured background look to it.
Yeah. So I think
You got you got a little bear sitting under a tree, some
it's
prancing deer.
a little
Is that
fox.
yeah, is that a fox? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, just a little fox under the tree there. So I was going to have birds and things as well, but I thought, I'd stick to the land animals. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's just like a fun, playful one, but like I say, quite storybook.
Very storybook. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I've given it that kind of. This is one of the ones specifically where I tried hard not to completely clean every aspect of it. So I've kept the
Hmm.
kind of texture and things that I was creating with the paint, and I've kept it as that. So it looks like it's been, you know, painted onto the fabric basically for the wallpaper.
Do you ever sort of like a side note, but do you ever kind of put in little not messages, but like secret little things that only you know are in there?
Yes, sometimes. So
You do? Like
one
a
of the
signature sort of.
yeah, one of the biggest ones I did. So sometimes I will do it, but the heavenly mural, so the clouds that I've done and serenity, and
Hmm.
that the nighttime one has constellations in, and I have my star sign, I have my boyfriend's star sign, and I have my mum's.
Wait, who your star sign and your mom's star sign, you said?
Yeah, and my boyfriend. So like, and I
Oh, and
put them all in. So there's a Taurus one in there. There's a Scorpio, a Virgo. So it's just like little nods
oh,
to.
that's cool.
So that's in there. So if anyone wants to stop and try and find the constellations of that, sometimes I will do things like that.
I
Where it's
love
just
that kind of stuff.
yeah, me
Yeah, I don't
too.
know. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So there are
Okay.
constellations.
So we're going to the next one. This is Moonflower. Very
Yes.
so I'm just describing for the audio listeners. It's
Yeah.
geez, how do you describe this? Like,
Super floral,
yeah,
botanical.
very floral, botanical, but it's
Max.
yeah, it's like I don't know. I'm gonna sound like an idiot trying to describe this, so I'm just gonna let you do it.
Well, this one again, it was because that whole running through theme of the entire collection was that we want the patterns, we want it to look more, it wasn't just about like items on their own or whatever. So this one, I liked the idea of it creating shape, so you can sort of see where the wiggly lines join together. So it was like a vine traveling across the page. But moonflower is a type of like creeping vine flower, which would like grow all over with trellises or up your house, whatever you want.
Okay.
Um,
That's what it reminds me of, but
yeah,
didn't know the best way to describe that. But yeah,
yeah. So
like
people have those
growing
big
up a
wooden
trellis.
arches or pergolas. They will often put morning glory, which is which is the flower this is on. It's the group flower, sorry, of flowers that this comes from. It will go all, it just travels all the way over. And it's just lovely. I wanted something. So this, like when I was saying, this is probably my most traditional way of painting. So if I was going to paint something for like a commission or for a gift for someone, I tend to fall into this kind of look. So it's a little bit more detailed, and it's a bit more like a nod to sort of vintage botanical illustrations, which is something that I've always been really inspired by. But yeah, the softly winding lines on this one, I think, is probably the biggest part of the whole repeat. And then you've got lots of different color flowers just to. But I think this is a really nice all over one. It's one you could potentially use on four walls, even though it's quite well, it's not full on, but you know what I mean. So there's a lot going on. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's one that I think I've tried to keep it. I've done a few with like bright colorways, like for people that are listening. There's like a dark plum colorway and a bright emerald, but I've kept it quite soft in most of the colors, I think. So
I do really like the different color options within these colorways. So like the chartreuse has
yes,
that kind of like mustardy background with those soft
mhm.
pinks and the soft blue florals. I think that's like a really, really interesting and cool
Yeah,
color combination. And I like how subtle the sage is.
Yes, well, because you've always got to have something like that. So when you're doing colorways, it's always good to have. You have your like fun trend-led ones, and then it's always good to have a blue and things like that. But I think I would say the majority of people would like the soft greens and the sort of linen-y colors, which is what
Mm-hmm.
I always make sure there's something like that for each design.
And now we're looking at the palette stripe. So this it's just obviously a stripe design, but done in a way that seems has, I guess, more of a not like an imperfect, more human touch
Yes.
to it.
Yeah, so this one, there's 8 colorways of this one, so I've completely it's the exception to the rule of what I was saying earlier. So, but only because it lends itself to so many different colors. Like I could have gone on and done hundreds of colorways for this one. But really what I've tried to do is it's something that it's colored in a way that can be a coordinate with any design. Because the likelihood is that this is the thing that you would pair with another one. Or use on its own. But this is, like I say, this is a coordinate that you could potentially use all over. But yeah, it's called palette stripe. So the reason I've called it that is because it's named after a palette knife, which is a type of tool that an artist would use to like get a thick bit of oil paint or something similar and sort of drag it across, and it gives it this really thick textural sort of imperfect line, and that's what I wanted this to look like. Which is why it's called palette stripe. So just because it's a hand painted artisan looking stripe rather than a perfect sort of candy stripe look.
Yeah. Moving on to cow parsley.
Yeah. So this one I would say is probably the most. It's very different to the others, but it's brought together in like a.
It's a bolder print, would you say?
Yeah, it's much more. It's bigger in scale. I was really inspired by Art Nouveau art and sort of texture and not texture architecture. Sorry, for this one. So there's a lot of line and like curve in those kind of designs. So I knew that I wanted to do something that was inspired by a wildflower of some kind. And cow parsley over here is very popular in like hedgerows and things like that. But when I was thinking about, if you had a painter studio or something in your garden, the likelihood is you would have cow parsley sort of growing just sort of wild and popping up everywhere. It's all over the show. So I liked the idea of having that. But also because it gives you that element of curve, like the fact that I could draw this and then have that curve and then split it to create a shape as well. So I've coloured it in a way where it's sort of created this sort of a chevron for over this. So when you piece it together, it creates this sort of shape just from the colours of the flowers. But yeah, it's much bolder. So I've included a few retro looking sort of 1970s colorways in this one as well for people that really want to embrace it. So coral, for example, is that 70s orange and bright pink and orangey tones of plum, and then they said the teal colorway, but even the emerald is very bright blues and pinks. Just to sit there. So this one is probably the bolder of the designs. But again,
it's funny that you say that because like I can see the coral, but then I didn't even think of it in terms of like the retro kind of 70s trend. But now that you say that, I was like, oh, I could totally see that now.
Yeah, that's definitely about. Obviously, there's a lot going on in interiors at the minute, but that kind of 70s look is quite prominent still. So I was like, I want to do a little nod to something like that. It's quite nostalgic and retro. So, but also just fun, like lighthearted. Like I know, obviously, it's nice to have. It's good to have all these sort of very calm and chalky and sophisticated colours, but I think sometimes we just want a pop of something mad. So that's what's brought in with this one.
And we're looking at one called Silk Road.
Okay, Silk Road. Yes, so again, another stripe. So this is a decorative stripe. This is one of the designs that I was sort of alluding to earlier when I said about how I was inspired by vintage silks and textiles in that way. So again, this one would have come straight from a book. So I was looking at all different sorts of things because I knew I wanted to do a decorative stripe, but I was just really like, when you think of a stripe, you're kind of like, how much, how can I do anything more with this? Like, I was something I was struggling a little bit to sort of, I had a bit of creative block with it. But then I was like, so looking at these different textiles from way back when. I have a book about the Spitalfields market, which is an old silk market in London. And there was a trailing sort of leaf pattern that I really loved. And this is what kind of inspired this one. But I wanted it to be a little bit more structured, which is why I've put this sort of bamboo look up the side. And again, the bamboo is the nod to things you might use in gardens that are, would manipulate things to keep them, in a certain way or to grow in a certain way. And then that's why I've called it Silk Road, because actually the bamboo in it gave it that sort of road almost, the repeat gave it that kind of look as if it was a road with, the lines and the traveling leaf. But also Silk Road is the historic trade route that carried silks and other sort of luxury goods from east to west historically. So I thought that really, because obviously I was inspired by a silk and there's that, the bamboo and everything. So I really loved the nod to that. So that's why that one's called Silk Road. So
it's funny looking at it. I wouldn't think of it as a stripe, but I guess it is because of
yeah, exactly. So because it's quite a large scale one, so that's those two would be one width of wallpaper, but once you've got it up on the wall, it is like regimented stripe.
Right. Because when I'm looking at it, I'm just seeing just like a curvy vine of some sort, and then a straight bamboo line. But I guess when you're seeing it all side by side, the sort of stripe element would really
and it's
be
bamboo,
obvious.
So because the leaf grows in that way and it creates that kind of ogee, but the bamboo gives it that element of the structure that I wanted to make sure that it had there.
All right. So next, I don't even know how to pronounce this. Is it pergola or pergola?
Yeah. So
pergola.
Again, pergola is like a type of thing you'd have in a garden, like you say, where you would just structure in the garden, which I like. So, but this one was really inspired by walled gardens. So I don't know if you've been certain walled gardens, you can see that they manipulate plants in a way, or trees in a way, where they can create really cool patterns. So you might get like a fan shape, or it'll go straight into a stripe, or it will come out. So all the branches are sort of kept in a way where they stay in a certain place. And again, I wanted to create stripe and keep it quite geometric. So that's where this one came about. So this one, again, you wouldn't necessarily know it was a stripe until it was on the wall. So those spaces either side is what creates the stripe, basically. So it's
the stripe is really created by the absence of the art.
Yeah. So basically. So when that's up, so that how that you can see it there. So for people that are listening, there is a little tiny bit of space in between the leaves on each side of the roll of wallpaper, and that's what creates that stripe, basically. But yeah, so that's just it's lots of lovely foliage, something that I just think is a real, it's just a go-to sort of like no-brainer design. Like, leaves and that kind of soft botanical look is always going to be popular, like it's timeless, like regardless of trend. So that's the kind of thing I wanted to achieve with this one. So, and I've painted it in a way where it's almost quite loose. Again, this is one of the ones where I wanted to be really quick with it too. So there's not like the actual detail is done with the color, opposed to actually, going in and physically drawing in spines of leaves and things like that.
Yeah, because I noticed that, like on that main one, the indigo, I feel like it's the most obvious, but it almost looks like light play, but it's just because you have that light blue.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted, because I liked the idea of being able to have a little accent color as well, which is why I've gone for we say that the powder blue in there with it as well. So, but really, in terms of colouring leaves, there's not a huge amount you can do without them looking funny as well. So it's all different shades of green, but soft blues always really work too, which is where that powder colourway comes in.
Now we're looking at Rosette.
Yeah, so Rosette is one of the designs. There's a couple of these in the collection where they are small scale geometrics, but I try to keep them, they're a little bit decorative. There's more that's gone into them. It's not just like a check or or a houndstooth or something. It's like there's a little bit of thought and playfulness that's gone into them. So Rosette is kind of it's a pattern sort of made of deconstructed flowers, but the shape of the deconstruction I like is sort of a nod to like classic garden details, like ornamental things you might get, like sundials, things like that, architecture and design. So it's a sort of shape that you see all over a garden in that way. But yeah, I've just used that shape to create a sweet little pattern. I liked it with a wiggle, and the wiggly line is a vine as well. So it's just it's a design basically to coordinate with the others, and just to sit with the rest of the collection basically.
Introducing Benchmade Modern. Tailored sofas crafted just for you, delivered in as little as 4 weeks. Create a custom piece that perfectly reflects your style. Choose from our collection of designs from timeless to modern. Customize the size, then personalize with your ideal fabric, cushion, and leg style. Discover your dream sofa today.
Now we're looking at one called Flower Patch, which,
Yes.
if I were to describe this, it's sort of little squares of florals, little squares with florals mixed with leaves, but it's like it's done in this sort of square pattern, like it's 4 squares across.
Yes. So
Yeah, it's
basically
interesting.
same thing. I'm going to sound repetitive now, but I wanted to keep it so there was an element of structure. But this one, there was a check sort of tile.
Yeah, it is like a check. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but again, it's one of those things where you can see it more so in certain colorways. But this one I actually drew. So what I did was, I knew that I wanted them to kind of look like vintage sort of botanical 1950s style illustrations. They're quite vintage. Like I've written in the little spiel I've written there about how it evokes memories of warm, sunny days at your grandparents' allotment. Like for me, it reminds me of my own nan's garden, like those pansies and those kind of bluebells, those kind of lovely flowers that you might get in those sorts of vintage illustration books as well. So what I did was I drew out the squares and I made sure that the shape of the flowers filled every corner of the squares. That's why they each have that kind of element to them. And then I just slotted them together and they just created. So I did 4 separate ones painted and then slotted them together into the repeat and then separated them to color them like this. So, that's how that one's come about. But it's like I say, it's just a nice take on a sort of check.
It's really unique. I don't know if I've ever seen anything quite like this one. To be honest, I mean, you may have if because you're more into that world, but
tiles and things like that. But this one, like I say, I didn't want it to be obviously like so you can draw it as if it's a tile and things like that. But I wanted it to have more space in between them, so it was more like a grid opposed to anything that was an illusion of something else, basically.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Thank you.
Now we're getting to one called Wicker, which is, I guess, self-explanatory. Sort of looks like a wicker basket, but in more, different colors and things like that.
Yeah. So again, similar to Rosette, this is just one that I thought it's really nice. Like I said, every collection should always have some little tiny designs that you could work on their own, but sit alongside the others, support the others, basically. Much smaller scale. Again, I wanted it to be taken from inspiration, the things that you would have outside or in a glass house or in a garden. So that's where the wicker came in. So wicker baskets for like rattan furniture, that kind of thing. That's where the sort of woven decorative designs come from. So it started just as like solid shape. And then I was like, actually, it'd be nice to have some decorative elements, which I've gone in and cut out some of these lovely patterns. But it just sort of gives it a subtle craft feel as well, which I quite like. But yeah, it's just a no-brainer sort of all-over design. But each design has been coloured to sit with the others. So there's 7 in this one.
I really hope we get to see some mix and match with some of these designs because you did such a good job at sort of creating these companion designs. Now we're looking at one called Sundial, which is very cool. Like it looks sort of like almost like what you would see on a tile flooring or like a tile ceiling even.
So bringing in that tile element again, but again, not making it too obvious. So obviously, I say obviously, people don't know, but our UK studio is in Brighton and Hove in the UK, and here the Victorian tiles are just everywhere. So every house has a Victorian tiles geared up to things. So I have a lot of, just natural inspiration for stuff like this. But in gardens, especially, this sort of tile and this sort of pattern is quite prominent. So bringing in that celestial vibe as well, which I wanted. That's why I get the sundial. I didn't want it to be too floral. I wanted it to have more like geometric element to it.
I love the teal.
Thank you. It's a good one for showing how the colorways really changed this design. I think this one's probably one of the most transformed, depending on what ones you use it with.
Yeah, definitely. That pretty much wraps up all the designs, is that right?
Yeah. So there's 12 designs in total. But like I say, it's a mix of murals. So one mural and then lots of, just varying scales of small ones and larger and, different types of geometric and floral, and but all really encompassing. The theme is what brings them together, but also the color. Yeah.
And so in the beginning, you had mentioned that a lot of your inspo kind of came from your own photography.
Yeah.
Which of these designs do you think was the most influenced by your own sort of?
In Pasto Meadows. So we live very close to the South Downs, which is a national park, basically. It's just rolling landscapes, basically, just lots of hills, lots of just that very, very stereotypical English countryside. So I didn't realize at the time when I was doing it. So I definitely wanted this English countryside kind of look. And as I just started painting almost from memory, then I was like, okay, I can see what's forming here. And that's when I was like, I'm going to go into my own photos and take details of things to finalize the design. So that one for sure. But also Pergola and sundial. So sundial, I say I've got so many pictures of Victorian tiles, and pergola especially. If I'm in a garden or anything like that, my camera, I've got something like 19,000 photos of just
Oh, wow.
It's just my dog, sunsets are just like plants. That's basically it. So that's all the time. So, but anytime I think, wow, that would be a really nice design, that would be lovely. So I have all these different folders for different things. Like this would be good for a foliage design. This was good for leaves. This blah blah blah. So, but yeah, like even things like I've been to, so the Royal Botanical Gardens here, Kew Gardens in London, are just insane. It's like but just beautiful botanical greenhouses, but just completely off the scale. Like they've been there for so many years and they're huge. I have so many photos there as well. So a lot of that kind of when I'm sort of talking about structure and the thing that like you have to see it, but it's insane. So those sorts of colours, sort of photos, sorry, is what I was looking at for a lot of the designs, which is good.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing this spring summer collection. When does this go live, Milton Ink? So we're talking on Friday the 13th in March. But this is it next week? Okay. So if you're depending on when you're listening to this.
Yeah, I think the 19th Thursday is when we're 6 days.
Okay. 6 days away. I better edit this podcast quickly.
Yeah.
But you can listen to it after the fact too. But I think people will be really interested in hearing like just everything that went into the artistic thought process that went into all the designs.
Yeah, it's so lovely to talk about the inspirations. So I hope people like the collection. Basically, that's all I care about. That people love it and they want to put it in their homes. So.
Do you get nervous? Are you anticipating like, oh my gosh, launch day and like it's actually going to go out into the world? And
I mean, I get quite stressed about it, and then I do this thing where I'm sort of checking, have people ordered samples? Have people done that? Like, I shouldn't really be in all the sales stuff, but I like to have a look just to add more pressure to myself as I'm creating.
Yeah.
The best thing always is, seeing people, just the people putting my designs and my artwork up in their houses or in their projects is just the best feeling. It never ever gets old. Like I get so excited seeing it on Instagram and customers email in things, or even just seeing people order. If someone's ordered 5 rolls, oh my god, that's amazing.
The validation.
So
yeah, it's like the validation. I'm really good. I'm good at what I do. People like it.
I need a lot of that. Like, people love it. Yeah, like one of my
they like me.
Yeah, probably not a healthy way to look at things. Like someone's on the phone, she's like good at my job. So, but like I'm very interested always in what colours people go for as well. That's a big one. So if someone like if I hear so and so's ordered like a big order of this, like what colour was it? Like that's what I want to know. So that's always important. But yeah, no, I'm excited. But we'll see.
And so are you already starting like the next thing? Or you are like because this is already set and ready to go. Everything's ready to go. So are you already like deep into the next thing?
Yes, well, I say I've planned the next sort of 3-4 sort of capsule collections. So we've got a few smaller launches, and I've just started painting again. So there's a little breather room. So once you finish this one, I sort of finished it around Christmas time. There's a little breather room where I kind of, you have a little bit of admin for a collection launch, and then we have the photo shoot and things like that. And then also I need a little bit of time to sort of put together my mood boards and research and things like that. And then you're like, okay, right, this is what the plan is. Let's start. So I actually started it last week. So we're back on the next collections now. So
do you find that like those breaks are actually really healthy for creativity?
Yeah. Because sometimes
where you're like, okay, I like if you can spend like 2 or 3 weeks sort of like out of creative mode.
Yeah.
It can help you recharge your batteries.
100%. Like I don't, sometimes if you do too much, and you also, you need a little bit of time away just to have a bit of different perspective. But also, like I say, in this time, I've also been to a few different trade shows, I've seen different things. I've just had a bit more going on. And then you come back and you're like, okay, this is exactly what I want to focus on now. Because I also tend to get very, very caught up in the theme of things as well. Like I'll listen to podcasts that are on that sort of thing. So when I was doing Fable, for example, I was like hugely listening to like Tudor historical podcasts because I was doing tapestry designs, things like that. Like I really like to involve myself in it. So you have to kind of always step away from the last collection and give yourself, 2 months basically to do a bit of admin work and a bit of everything and then prep for the next one. So different
Got it.
things. So,
Well, I think it's lovely. It's beautiful. I can't wait for everybody to see it. It's going to be great to see the reaction and have everybody pairing the different designs together. So
yeah, that's what I want to see, hopefully. So it's exciting.
Yeah. So for those that are listening or watching, go out and check out the spring summer collection, the Painters Glasshouse.
That's it.
Created by Yasmin Smith. Let her know you love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks. Yeah. So thanks for hopping on with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me.